This episode is brought to you by A-Identified, the AI-powered prospecting tool helping financial professionals find warmer leads and close more business. Make lists of ideal clients, see your warmest intro path to each, and hang up on cold calling forever with A-Identified. Check it out at aidentified.com. Warm wins. Welcome to the WealthStack podcast. I'm your host, Shannon Rosic, the director of WealthStack Content Solutions. I'm joined by Andrew Johnson, CEO and co-founder of Testimonial IQ, who recently won a Wealthy for top compliance technology provider. Congratulations. I have to ask, was that your first Wealthy's experience?
It was a lot. And it's funny because we actually just launched our platform after the Wealthies last year. And when we were watching the event and all the posts on LinkedIn, we were talking amongst ourselves on Slack saying, wouldn't it be amazing if we could be a part of that next year? And so it was extra special for us to win that Wealthy this year.
Oh, well, I love to hear it. And yes, we are in the business of making dreams come true. So congratulations again. And look, we did promise folks we'd talk about harnessing the power of testimonials for business growth in this episode. But, before we dive into the first segment and the meat of this conversation, I do want to start with your background, and be warned, this is probably the hardest question you'll get this entire conversation, because I want to know what makes Andrew, well, Andrew.
Yeah. I started my career in the Navy, and I think that's had a huge impact on my career, particularly in just getting comfortable with things that are uncomfortable, and showing up every day, and often getting up earlier than I'd like to. But recently, in the last few years, we've had a couple of young kids, and that's now kind of takes over my whole life, and everything else is just a slice of it. So that's probably kind of the biggest driver of who I am today.
Oh, well, very interesting back. You've lived multiple lives already in a very
I
short amount of time.
I feel like that by 9 a.m. some days.
Oh gosh. Well, that'll be a whole other episode. But I am curious, you are a serial entrepreneur. What led you down that route? What have you learned over the years? Anything that has surprised you being part of that process?
Yeah, I always talk about my entrepreneurial journey as sort of a happy accident, as Bob Ross would say, right? I didn't start my career doing that. I wasn't in startups before. In fact, after the Navy, I worked in consulting and then at Facebook, which is sort of, now the opposite of a startup. But I joined a venture studio to help them build and launch what was designed to be a digital ads platform. And concurrently, we saw this large opportunity in the IRA space in terms of lead generation. And so we built a company called Dataline Advisory. And it's grown and it's doing quite well. Actually, they were up for a Wealthy as well. And then I liked it so much that I decided to start another company from scratch. And I think the biggest surprise has just been that I enjoyed it. I didn't grow up thinking I'd start companies, and now it turns out it's really fun.
Oh, okay. It's fun. Usually that's not the first word that I hear out of an entrepreneur's mouth.
It's fun sometimes.
There we go. There we go. So, just high level overview then. What does Testimonial IQ do? Who do you serve, and who should ultimately be using you?
Yeah, Testimonial IQ helps financial advisors generate client feedback, including Google reviews, which is what really sets us apart. And we do it in a way that's not just compliant, but importantly, provides a digital audit trail that demonstrates that they were compliant when exam time comes around. So we support SEC and FINRA registered firms as well as state registered firms, and really ranging from 10 million in assets under management up to 60 billion. So all types of firms. I think every advisor should be asking for feedback today. I think every advisor should be using testimonials in their marketing strategy. When it comes to engaging with a third party software platform, from what we found, I think once you get to around 50 clients or so, or you have multiple advisors, maybe an operations team, I think that's usually when it's a great time to bring in a software platform like ours to build a compliant process around testimonials.
All right. Well, thank you for the background and the context. So, like I said, we've come to our first segment, which I call Stats All, folks. And you certainly made this one easy for me, because on your own website, it says that 90% of online searches happen on Google, and 42% of prospective clients are more likely to search Google for a financial advisor than they are to ask a friend. All right. Why should advisors care about this?
Yeah. Yeah, when we were first designing this platform, we were talking to the CMO of a fairly large firm. And what she told us is that whether we like it or not, Google is our new homepage. And that really stuck with us, right? You see advisors spend tens of thousands of dollars on website redesigns and on SEO firms, but none of that matters if no one sees it. And when folks are searching, and by the way, 93% of all searches start on Google, your Google business profile is the first thing they see. And if it isn't good and they don't like what's on it, it's probably the last thing they're going to see before they click on a competitor site. So, building that online reputation, particularly through reviews on places like Google, is the best way to make sure that folks like that and actually get to see the rest of your content.
Curious where the other 7% are searching if you're not using Google. Is it like
Yeah,
DuckDuckGo or
Bing, I
Bing?
think
Okay.
DuckDuckGo or whatever it is, but yeah, it's an odd crowd.
Yeah, fair enough. And it was interesting because I came across a study by Bright Edge that said SEO drives about 1,000% more traffic than organic social media. What do advisors need to know about SEO and how does it fit into the online reputation equation? I remember when I was running marketing at a wealth tech firm and I went down the SEO hole and it can get very overwhelming, very aggressive, very quickly. And so obviously advisors don't necessarily have the time to dedicate to that. So what do you recommend here?
Yeah, and first thing in terms of what the advisors need to know about it comes down to getting discovered, right? There's so much software around building amazing websites or lead nurturing tools and content tools and, sales training, but none of that matters if someone doesn't know you exist. And SEO is about making sure that when folks are in that moment where they're looking for an advisor or considering one, you become one of those options that they consider. There's hundreds of thousands of financial advisors, and when they're starting their journey, they're going to start on Google and they're going to kind of come up with a short list, and making sure that you're a part of that is so important. And so, uh, you're right, it can get incredibly complex, and Google changes the algorithm every month, and you can go down a lot of rabbit holes. But the great thing about reviews is that's been a consistent part of what Google and other search engines use to rank, particularly in local search. So that's one that advisors can invest in and not worry that that's going to change on
So how does Testimonial IQ then help financial advisors
them.
align their online reputation with their real world relationships?
Well, I think one of the reasons I love testimonials, and actually one of the reasons that the SEC finally changed their stance and made them okay, is it's about helping consumers have access to more information and discover more and do more research about potential advisors before engaging with them. And having testimonials is a great way. Again, you can spend all this money on marketing firms, but just have your clients in their own language talk about their experience. And that language that they use is more likely going to resonate with prospects than anything you come up with.
And it was interesting. I was at a conference a few weeks ago and chatting with various size firms about their marketing programs because I was interested. And I came across a billion-dollar firm who just really didn't believe in marketing. They were strictly referral based, they knew their target audience. But I thought that was so interesting to be at that point and not be willing to at least dabble or invest in these types of services. So I have to ask, what are some common mistakes that advisors make when trying to manage their online reputation and how can your firm help avoid them?
Yeah, I kind of like you just pointed out, I think the biggest mistake is just not doing anything at all. We see some firms have sort of a fear of feedback, right? They're almost afraid of what clients might say when they ask for feedback. Others have this mentality of, well, we've always done it a certain way, so we're going to grow that way. Or, good advisors don't need to do marketing; they just grow through referrals. And those firms are going to get left behind. I think it's sort of like saying 20 years ago, well, I never had a website. Why do I need one now? And it's because times are changing.
And think about how many touch points folks go through when they're searching for something, whether it's an advisor, a restaurant, a vacation spot, a hotel. You're doing, having multiple touch points on social, on their website before you even make the decision to reach out. So to me, curating those testimonials is a no-brainer. But I do want to clear something up quickly. What's the difference between a testimonial and an endorsement?
Yep. So testimonial is going to be from a client, and their clients can be talking about their own direct experience with the firm, where an endorsement is going to be from a third party. So sometimes that could be something like a CPA partner that they work with who's endorsing the firm. It could also be someone like a paid celebrity endorsement.
Thank you for that. And look, testimonials are a great way to drive growth at a practice. But when it comes to negative reviews, how should advisors navigate that?
Yeah. So, We always tell them, hey, all feedback's good feedback. Take the opportunity, respond privately, close the loop, and understand what you can do better. But it's funny because a lot of the firms we talk to, the first thing they're concerned about, even more than anything related to compliance, is, well, what happens if I get negative feedback? And what we usually say is, well, one, it's pretty rare. So when you look at a study of Google reviews across the industry, advisors do much better than the average brick and mortar business. People really like them. They like their advisor, or usually they would have left. But second, having a mixture of different reviews in a profile really helps build trust. Consumers have become accustomed to firms that have sort of rigged the system and paid for reviews or selectively asked. So today, prospects trust firms with a rating of 4.2 to 4.5 stars more than they trust a firm with a perfect 5-star rating.
That is so interesting. And that probably goes into psychology somehow. But I mean, just as an everyday consumer, I would have to agree. I'm not going to pick a sushi restaurant that has below 4.5 stars, for example. So
Yep.
interesting data point. But I'm curious, where does Testimonial IQ fit into an advisor's overall tech stack?
We really feel like we're a hybrid between marketing and compliance, and that our role is to bridge the gap. When we were building Testimonial IQ, we had a lot of discussions. Are we compliance or marketing? And which direction do we want to go? And we realized for something like this, for something like testimonials, it's so integral to growth, but carries so much nuance around the compliance processes. We couldn't be one or the other. We had to be both. So we created a platform that makes it very easy for marketing compliance teams to collaborate together rather than sort of them being at odds with one another.
So I want to nerd out just a little bit. Can you walk us through the process of what it would look like for an advisor to use your platform and how that all fits together?
Sure. And I can give you sort of an example. You might have an advisor who signs up. We help them first and foremost create written processes and procedures around how they're going to use testimonials and build that into their compliance program. Next, they might have a marketing team, either in-house or outsourced, build these white labeled feedback requests. They're going to get those approved inside the platform by compliance. Once they're approved, the marketing team can send them out. And we actually have some new integrations coming out in the next few weeks to help automate those processes. Clients submit the feedback, it comes into the platform. There's optional workflows to encourage them to share to Google. And then there's another compliance workflow. So compliance has a chance to see all those testimonials, select which ones are appropriate for their own advertising purposes. And then they can build website tools, widgets, social posts, and all those sort of things directly within the platform. And what's important about that is there's a digital record of everything for when exam time comes, from how clients were asked for feedback, who was asked, what they shared, what they agreed to, and the oversight involved.
And are you seeing advisors embrace this? Obviously, it's a bit of a new concept in our industry to solicit feedback like this. And obviously, with the SEC marketing rule change, that's opened the doors for this. But are you seeing advisors at least embrace it? And how are they soliciting feedback and how are they using these testimonials?
We are seeing it, and we're still early, right? I think it's fewer than 10% still that are reporting on their ADV that they're using testimonials and marketing. So it's definitely the most cutting edge firms, but they're also the ones that tend to be the most aggressive in marketing and that are benefiting it from the most right now. So we see firms getting more and more comfortable with it, and we see them using it in a range of ways. Everything from gathering feedback for internal use only, sort of doing more client surveys, to putting them on their website. We're starting to see them build LinkedIn posts and things like that, maybe incorporating them into prospect newsletters. And then ultimately, where we really do see the needle move the most is the firms that are embracing Google reviews, that are comfortable getting those opinions out there in the public, and that are kind of shining a spotlight on their relationship with clients for their prospective clients to see.
And you mentioned we're still kind of in early stages with this. So I want to pivot and another concept and trend that's in somewhat early stages in our space. I want to ask you briefly about AI. We'd be remiss if we didn't talk about it on the WealthStack podcast, but how are you utilizing it at Testimonial IQ? What's your stance and how are you ensuring compliance?
Yeah, I always laugh because every investor we talk to has asked us about how we're going to build AI into the platform, and no advisor has ever brought that up. We have done some experimenting. We use some stuff in the background just to help us, whether it's analytics or code, or there's great places that ChatGPT and other LLMs can be useful. But one in this industry, you have to be very mindful of any data that goes into those. We've looked at using LLMs for sentiment analysis or to help firms kind of analyze testimonials from a compliance standpoint. But what we found is that they're just not at a level yet where we trust them for things like compliance. I think they can be a great aid to compliance officers, and there's some platforms like Hadrius that are coming out that are getting a lot of momentum. But my big concern right now is that firms get a little too comfortable and start feeling that those are a substitute for human review. And I think it's really important to remember that LLMs are nothing more than pattern recognition. They don't understand the question you ask. They don't even understand their own responses. And so maybe a great tool, but not one that we're comfortable with yet from a compliance standpoint. And I think we've got some opportunities down the line when it comes to big data analysis, pulling out insights from large qualitative feedback combined with some more sort of behavioral and demographic CRM data. That's more exciting down the future, but the truth is we're not focused on integrating any of that today.
Oh, makes sense. So what else is on the roadmap then for Testimonial IQ?
We are 100% focused on integrations, particularly when it comes to email and CRM. A lot of people, they build software that they want people to enjoy using. Our goal is to build software that advisors don't have to use and that it just works in the background. So you set it up once, your clients are automatically going to get these feedback requests after key interactions or on a regular cadence. You're going to get notifications for reviews. Everything's going to populate on your website. And we want to make it, advisors spend more time with their clients and less time on software is our goal.
Well, I love to hear that you're focusing on integration because that word still makes the hair bristle on many folks' necks. Still seems to be the new four-letter word at our industry because there
Yep.
still is so much friction between all the applications that have to talk to each other, especially when you're building your own tech
Yep.
stack. So very encouraging to hear that you're making that a priority right now. So one more question before we move on to our next segment. Any marketing trends that are of interest to you or you are seeing coming down the pike that advisors should be aware of?
Well, you mean, of course, beyond testimonials and Google reviews?
Well, that can still be part of it.
I think they're a part of a larger trend of becoming more human, right? I used to always joke with folks that whenever I'd review advisor websites, they were all the same, right? They're the same picture of a sailboat with an elderly white couple
Always the
drinking white
sailboat.
wine and a tagline about securing your financial future. And I think as more people discover different niches and prepare for the great wealth transfer and try to figure out how to connect with millennials, you're seeing personality come through a lot more, and that's refreshing to see.
Yes, it is. Just having that authentic presence, no matter where you're showing up, is so critical moving forward. And the advisors who embrace that are going to win.
Yep,
It's pretty
exactly.
clear. All right. I promised we'd move on to segment two now, Andrew. And I call this segment Ask Us Anything, where I have gone out to the social universe and asked them to submit questions they want answered by you. And we certainly had a fair amount of folks sliding into the DMs this week. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. First question we got was 70% of organic growth is from 6% of RAAs. Would you say testimonials are the main driver for the other 94% to actually compete and in the spirit of taking the power of referrals from one to one to one to many? Woo.
So one, I have to say that the sort of last line of that, right? The taking the power of referrals from one to one to one to many. I agree wholeheartedly with that. We had an advisor I spoke with recently who works with us who told me that he would take a Google review any day of the week over a referral because he knows that thousands of people are going to see that Google review. I wish I could say is as simple as use testimonials and you'll sort of outpace 94% of the industry when it comes to organic growth. It's not that simple. Testimonials, Google reviews, nothing's a silver bullet. But what I will say, and because testimonials are sort of only embraced so far by the leading edge of the industry, I think most of the firms we talk with tend to be a little more marketing forward and a little more aggressive. And I think what we see there and the trend I notice is that they're just a lot more open to experimentation, right? We don't hear the same old, oh, well, we grow through referrals and that's it. It's, well, we try this, we're doing a website redesign, we're doing a referrals program, we're also doing seminars, we're going to experiment with some Google ads. And I think being willing to experiment and test different things and to sort of iterate is the common thread we see. But I will say I have never talked to a firm that has more than 50 Google reviews who says that they don't work or don't benefit from them.
Well, There you go. Facts are the facts. All right. Second question we got. This is getting into psychology a little bit again, but this user wrote, I want to understand why a client would leave a testimonial, under what circumstances, what's in it for them, and why would somebody even take the time, especially around a topic that's pretty sensitive. Your advisor, that's a sensitive topic.
Yeah, no, that's one of the top questions we get, in addition to what happens if I get a bad review, is, oh, well, my clients actually want to do this. And I always chuckle a little bit because we are so accustomed to this in every other industry. And I always tell people, everyone from my barber to my mechanic to even my urologist has asked me to leave them a review on Google before. And it's not something that people are turned off by anymore. It's just sort of part of doing business today. And it works for all those other industries. But there's also, like you said, there's some psychology behind it too. And when you ask for a favor or you ask for help, it's actually a way of building trust and strengthening that bond. So asking a client to take a minute out of their time to do you a quick favor, to give you some feedback, it both shows that you actually care and value their feedback, but it also kind of creates that reciprocity, and helps build a little bit of trust there. And what we always hear from advisors is it's still way less intrusive than asking them, who are your wealthy friends and give me their contact information.
That is a great point, because I think about the only time I ever leave reviews is if I've had an absolutely stellar experience with something or an absolutely horrific scarring experience with something. There's really no in between.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. One of what our recent study that we published in Kits is not so long ago confirmed is what's been shown in other industries is if you don't ask for reviews, they tend to come in skew negative because people leave them when they've had this really atrocious experience. But as soon as you ask, you start getting a much more representative sample, and then they start to skew positive.
Yeah. And I mean, I get the texts all the time. Any service provider that I'm using, whether it's my dentist or skincare, you name it, I'm
Yep,
getting a text immediately after I walk out the door for a
exactly.
review. So, it's something that we're certainly used to in other industries. And like you said, we're just now scratching the surface in wealth management. So I'm very curious to see if this takes off or not, which is actually a perfect segue to our final question of the segment. How do you see online reputation management evolving for financial advisor over the next, say, 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I really think it's going to become table stakes, and I hope we can be a part of that. But I don't think it'll be a big deal in 2 or 3 years. I think every firm's going to have a program around it. Just before this, podcast, I was doing some research. I Googled Thai food near me, and every top result had more than 300 Google reviews. But when you Google financial advisor near me here in Denver, there's a couple firms that have 50 or more, who are clearly being very proactive. And then this long, long, long tail of firms that no reviews, haven't updated their Google business profile, and are getting left behind. So I really think it's just going to become a kind of a general part of business hygiene going forward.
And just because I have you and I want to pick your brain, are you seeing that that's a holdup a little bit for advisors, that they even have to manage kind of like their Google, business profile? Is that at all a holdup, or does that even take much time?
It doesn't take much time. It's not always the most user friendly, but there are so many amazing marketing firms out there that can help with this, or sometimes the college kid next door. Honestly, it's a solvable problem for them.
All right, good to know. I was just curious too. Well, Andrew, I appreciate you being put on the spot and your very insightful answers, but we have come to our final and what might be my favorite segment that I call Stack It or Whack It. So I'm going to throw out a few technologies, and they're not always necessarily wealth tech related, especially if I know you. Sometimes it's just random thoughts or fun facts I know about you. And you tell me if they are essentially worth the hype or not. So stack it, use it, whack it, lose it.
Yeah,
So,
all right.
circling all the way back to the beginning of our conversation, when you mentioned that you formerly served in the Navy, and again, thank you for your service. But what are your thoughts around AI in the military, especially around machine learning for these now underwater unmanned vehicles? Stack or whack?
Stack it. I was actually, for about a year and a half, I was an anti-submarine warfare officer, fairly familiar with having to try to find things underwater. And I know I wouldn't want to be underwater, in one of those little tubes. So, hey, the more we can put down there that's unmanned, have them operate on their own, collect great intel for us, I'm all for it.
Love it. All right. And the second one, you mentioned you work for Facebook. So I have to ask, the metaverse, stack it or whack it?
Yeah, whack it. No, I actually supported some of the metaverse teams there, and I always laugh because they spent First, they spent billions of dollars building the metaverse, and then they had to spend billions trying to, convince people to actually go and spend time in there. And I don't think they've cracked that code yet. So I'm not a fan.
Well, that's a fun job to be able to throw around billions to just experiment. So,
I guess. Yeah, that's a good point.
well, Andrew, it has just been an absolute pleasure getting to know you and just thank you for this conversation today. Please feel free to tell listeners where they can find out more about you and what you're working on at Testimonial IQ.
Yeah, check out our website, testimonialiq.com, or shoot me an email, andrew@testimonialiq.com. I'm always happy to chat with firms, not just to give them a demo of the platform, but just to kind of walk them through the compliance elements of the industry, what's worked, what hasn't worked for other firms we've worked with, and to be a sounding board for their marketing and compliance teams.
Love it. Well, be sure to reach out, folks, and be sure to like and subscribe the WealthStack podcast. And you can listen on all major podcasting platforms and follow all things WealthStack on wealthmanagement.com, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And if you want the in-person WealthStack experience, join me June 10th through the 12th at the Boca Raton Resort in Florida for Wealth Management Edge. Thank you all for tuning in. This episode is brought to you by Identified, the AI-powered prospecting tool helping financial professionals find warmer leads and close more business. Make lists of ideal clients, see your warmest intro path to each, and hang up on cold calling forever with Identified. Check it out at aidentified.com. Warm wins.